What are the different ways drones and related technologies being used by the armed forces worldwide? There's also been attack on civilian infrastructure or cities infrastructure.
Unfortunately, the lines between military and civilian, areas are getting blurred because of this kind of warfare.
Do you see that as something which we're going to see more moving forward in modern warfare?
Counter drone systems are going to become the norm of the day.
The dark side of technology does sound scary without going into the ethical implications.
While drones has got some very constructive use cases, but the flip side is, of course, it can also be misused.
EU and India have signed this historic pact.
I would definitely like to say that this is the deal of the century. India is going to become an important hub for global manufacturing and innovation in drones. Terrorist groups are employing drones not just to attack military sites, they are in fact using drones to drop narcotics, supply illegal currency, drop other kinds of contraband items and weapons and pistols.
When we spoke about drone usage in the countries that are deploying them in the various ways they're deploying them, it seems to be more of a deep pockets kind of game. So where is India on that? In this episode, we are going to look at how drone technology has played out in conflicts, right from Russia, Ukraine to the Middle East, and how AI technology and low-cost platforms are transforming military strategies today. We are also going to look beyond warfare and how it's impacted internal security, border threats, smuggling, and the threats that drones pose to day-to-day life and security. On today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Sanket Kulkarni, who's a defense and security analyst, and he works at the extremely interesting intersection of geopolitics, drone technology, and national security policy. Before we move on, can I please request you to hit the subscribe button so that me and my team are motivated to get you more good content. Today's episode is also brought to you by Arc Oils, which is a cold-pressed premium oil brand which is well known for its purity and freshness. And now, over to Dr. Sanket. Hi Sanket, how are you?
Hi Sampada.
Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. It's very nice of you to invite me here.
Thank you. It's really interesting times, isn't it? Which brings me to my very first question on the topic. Ukraine's leadership said that 80% of their strikes have been carried out by drones. You are a drone technology expert. What do you have to say to that, keeping in context how warfare has evolved over the years?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and thank you for the very kind words. Now, coming to the aspect of drone warfare and Ukrainians having caused 80% of the battlefield casualties actually emanating from drones. That is true.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think the war is in its sixth year now, the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yes, fifth year. Yeah.
Fifth or sixth year. And I think that's when drones really, in terms of drones being used on the war field, really came in the public eye, because that's the first time we saw something deviating from traditional warfare and in the kind of the large scale that it is.
Yes.
So yes, sorry, go on.
So in defense parlance, we have a concept called asymmetric warfare. I'll illustrate that concept through a small example.
Please.
Say an adversary of mine has got large reserves or a pretty big armored fleet. Now, me being the poorer nation or the under-resourced country, I may not be able to match my adversary's number of tank fleets.
Okay.
So instead of building more tanks, what I do is I invest my limited resources in acquiring or building anti-tank guided missiles, which are probably like 1/4 or probably even lesser than what a tank would actually cost. And with the use of anti-tank guided missiles, I can actually punish my enemy and also effect significant changes in the battlefield. So that is exactly the philosophy that the Ukrainians have used, which is that while they cannot match the Russia's missile and artillery forces or even the conventional air forces, what Ukrainians have decided is they started pumping all their resources, pooling all their resources in building drones. Some of the drones are what we call as commercial off-the-shelf drones, which are repurposed and fitted with explosives, and some of them they have like built from scratch. And the Ukrainians today, like we call Israel a startup nation.
Right.
Ukraine now has become a test bed for high-end military drones in Europe. So in the last 3-4 years, like they have probably not been able to affect great geographical or territorial changes in the battlefield, but they have managed to punish the Russian armed forces
And defend themselves to the largest
to
extent
a
they
great
can.
extent. To a great extent. In fact, some of the operations that the Ukrainian armed forces and their unmanned aerial system forces have done is really baffling. In the sense, they have actually taken the war right into the heart of their enemy. Imagine Kremlin, like the headquarters of the Russian presidency, was attacked by a drone suspected to be a Ukrainian drone, and they have also targeted cities in and around Moscow, which is like pretty far from the Russia-Ukraine border. They have managed to like cause explosions using drones in some of their headquarters of key ministries like the Ministry of Economic Affairs. They have also managed to target the residences of some of the key military officials just to, intimidate the officials. So that is the extent to which the Ukrainians have managed not only in developing drones, but they have also innovated in as to how drones actually need to be deployed in a battlefield.
So you mentioned that Ukraine has become almost like a testing ground for drones
Yes.
in Europe, right?
Absolutely.
You also mentioned they've done a lot of innovations and they've kind of innovated on the ground while in the midst of a war.
Yes.
So what are the kind of innovations that we have seen Ukraine do that perhaps haven't been seen before in the battlefield?
Well, for instance, there are quite a few, in fact. For instance, they have now retrofitted a drone which can actually accommodate a 155 artillery shell.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Now there is something called as a FPV drone, that is a first person view drone. FPV drone, basically it started as a hobby drone. Basically there are actually like drone races which happens, like you have got these like very small drones which can fly at breakneck speed, and the Ukrainians they operate it remotely, and they are using these drones to pop out grenades on Russian soldiers. So that is one. And even if these drones are not, say, fitted with explosives, imagine a drone flying at breakneck speed and just ramming into a position or like into a soldier's head or a sensitive part of the body that can actually cause significant injuries, right?
Right.
So you have like videos where North Korean soldiers who were like conscripted into the Russian armed forces, they're patrolling those snow deserts around Russia-Ukraine border. The minute they see a drone right from above, right, they simply start scurrying, they start running for their life, and that is the kind of intimidation and psychological warfare that the Ukrainians have managed to employ. So this is like some of these examples. Second is they have also mastered the art of something called as unmanned underwater vehicles or unmanned surface vessels. These are basically boats which are remotely operated. Now these fly in conjunction with drones, and they have caused significant damage to the Russian Navy. They have managed to like launch night attacks on some of the ports that Russia has now occupied in Crimea. So Ukraine has really aced the battlefield innovation
Yeah,
when it
this
comes
is-
to drones.
This is cutting edge technology.
Absolutely. And cutting edge thinking, I would say.
Cutting edge thinking, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When we're talking about Russia and Ukraine, there's also been attack on civilian infrastructure or cities infrastructure
Yeah.
by the Russians. So do you see that as something which we're going to see more moving forward in modern warfare?
So, great question. I think Russia and Ukraine have been at each other's throat in terms of drone warfare. And critical energy infrastructure sites has been one of the key areas where both sides have been hitting each other. And it's important because from a battlefield perspective, right, you want to impair the adversaries, you want to drain out the energy resources of the other side. And like last week, there was a barrage of missile and drone attacks by Russia against a Ukrainian city. And imagine it's the peak of winter, right? And the Ukrainians are already
took out the energies.
Exactly.
Okay.
And imagine now you're hitting at some of their energy sites, you're hitting their oil refineries, you're hitting at their nuclear power plants, you're hitting out at energy pipelines, you're hitting out at energy transmission lines. So at the peak of winter, when you are targeting energy resources sites or critical infrastructure sites, it actually drains out the other side. So taking your second part of the question, drone warfare is a relatively new form of warfare, and it's evolving. It started prominently with the Azerbaijan-Armenia war back in 2021, I think, where Azerbaijanis were using Israeli and Turkish drones to take out Armenian military positions.
Is that right? Okay.
From there, I think it has moved on, and it has each side, each military globally has tried to fine-tune the attack methodologies, and they are now finding very innovative ways how we can employ drones. And I think that's what is happening now. In 2019, there were Houthi rebels in Yemen, which were supplied with drones from Iran, and they attacked a major oil refinery site in Saudi Arabia called Abqaiq and Khurais.
Okay.
And that caused significant damage to the refinery, and it actually halted production of oil for a few days, I think, and it took like weeks for restoring the whole refinery site. So each side is employing these innovative tactics and trying to not just impair the other side's relative military strength, but also the energy resources. And it's also psychological warfare, right? Imagine there is a drone which could or could not have an explosive just hovering above a population, right? Imagine the psychological damage and the morale of the population, how it shapes, right, when you see a drone.
Right.
So yeah, it is unfortunately the lines between military and civilian areas are getting blurred because of this kind of warfare. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. It sounds, the dark side of technology does sound scary without going into the ethical implications of whether they should be targeting cities, either side should be targeting cities. I read recently about how they're deploying drones for security for the upcoming Olympics, which I found was really interesting. So where do you see this going? Like, how far have we progressed in drone and counter-drone technology and in usage in areas other than war?
So this is going to be the norm of the day, and it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. While drones has got some very constructive use cases, like there is a very interesting article by a journalist called Josh Posner. He has tabulated around 130 plus use cases of drones, right from sports to media, entertainment, healthcare, construction, real estate, military, surveillance, mapping, surveys, so many things. But the flip side is, of course, it can also be misused not just by militaries, but also what in defense we call as non-state actors. Could be terrorist groups, it could be insurgents, it could be activists, it could like activists in the sense like radical activists, it could also be criminals, right? And coming to the point of drones being, like there are security measures which are being taken in that Italian city, right? So why it is done is because, a lot of intrusion also happens from fans, who can be like very over enthusiastic about covering the match or the sporting events. And if a drone mistakenly actually flies close to the people, right, it could actually cause significant amount of confusion, commotion, and even lead to stampede. So there is a need for sensitizing communities, in and around the place, but also there is a greater need for employing what is called as a counter drone system. These are basically certain systems and subsystems which can detect a unauthorized drone which is violating a particular airspace where it is not supposed to fly. Secondly, it also identifies the kind of drone. So once you are able to identify the drone and classify that whether it is a threat, it is carrying a certain payload, or it has got just a camera, or whether it is harmless or it intends to target a certain area. So you have these counter drone systems which can detect, which can identify, classify the kind of drones, and also with certain soft kill and hard kill methods, it can actually mitigate the drone threat in a very safe manner. So these counter drone systems are going to become the norm of the day for any major, not just sporting events, for any large public gatherings. It could be like, you see election rallies. The Venezuelan president who was captured by the Americans, right? I read that he had a political rally going on, and there were a couple of dissidents who were not very happy with him. They tried to target him using a drone which were laden with explosives. So that is the extent to which you had the public assassination of the Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. It was done by a shooter, right? And he was eventually caught, I guess. But imagine the same assassination recurring. Instead of an active shooter, you have got a drone operator who is sitting remotely and operating it.
That's
and
terrifying.
Can not just assassinate a leader, but also cause mass commotion in and around the area.
Yeah.
So it is extremely scary.
Yeah, that's I think quite terrifying to see the
Yes.
possible misuses of technology. Whenever we are talking about drones and in the conversations we had leading up to the podcast, you've mentioned Iran and Israel and the conflict between them quite prominently, and how a lot has come out in terms of drones and technology from the conflict between them. So how do you see that having panned out?
So Iran and Israel had a 12-day war.
Right.
And this war actually saw exchange of missiles and drones in a very liberal way. I mean, liberal is a wrong word to use, but Israel spared no effort in pounding Iranian missile sites, their nuclear sites, their military installations, just like India employed drones against Pakistan. Iran also has got a very robust drone capability. For the last 20 years or so, Iran has actually been developing some very indigenous high-end drones, which now they are actually exporting to Russia. And Russia has now started mass producing these drones.
The same ones.
The same drones, and are using against Ukrainian military. So Israel and Iran had a 12-day war last year, and we saw the Israelis are very good at drones. They have got some high-end drones, and they've been one of the prominent countries which have been not just innovating but have been exporting drones to some of their allies, including India. But the surprising element was Iran for me, in the sense that while I thought that the combined strength of United States and Israel would be able to decimate Iran, but Iran actually fought back, and what they did was something which was very unraveling to me, in the sense that they have invested for the last, again I go back to the strategy of asymmetric warfare.
So what is asymmetric warfare?
So asymmetric warfare is basically a military which is under-resourced, which is not equally matched to its adversary, invests and deploys certain platforms which are game-changing in nature, and which will give it an upper hand in the battlefield.
Okay.
So if you have, say, great aircrafts, so instead of actually investing equally in conventional fighter aircrafts, I will probably employ better surface to air missiles, which is exactly what the Mujahideens did. The Afghan Mujahideens did back in the 80s. So when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and they were pounding all these Afghan cities and towns with helicopter gunships and fighter aircrafts, the Afghan rebels, with the help of CIA, what they actually did was invested in surface to air missiles, which basically started taking out the helicopter gunships. And the result was that the Soviet Air Force started avoiding Afghan cities or those zones which are known to have these air defense sites. So that is asymmetric warfare, and that is exactly what even the Iranians have done in the last 1 or 2 decades. Now they understand that conventionally they cannot match the capabilities of either the United States or the Israelis. What they have done is they have invested a lot of their resources in building a very strategic missile force and high-end drones. Their drones are so sophisticated that even the Russians have started acquiring them. There is a drone called Shahed 136, which the Russians have now adopted, and not just acquiring it, but have started mass producing them in Russian factories. And these drones are now being used against Ukrainian forces on the battlefield.
So Iran's capability is relevant for more than one reason, not
yes,
just...
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And what the Iranians have done is they have not just started using drones face to face, but they have also started distributing these drones to some of the non-state actors in the region. It is the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Hamas terrorist organization in Palestine. They have also given the drones to Houthi rebels in Yemen. And these drones were actually used against the Saudi Arabia's oil refinery, which I alluded to earlier.
Right.
So this is the, they have, the unfortunate 7th October 2023 attack in Israel. Hamas actually used some of the drones to drop grenades and explosives on Israeli watchtowers. So that they could then facilitate the entry of the terrorist group, people.
So you just spoke about the Shahed drone, which is being supplied by Iran to Russia, right? There's also been talk about the Ukrainian Sting Interceptor drone. So tell us how it's working with drones and counter drones and the technology back and forth.
So Interceptor drones are very interesting. I would like to give a small context here before I come to the concept.
Please.
So counter drone kill chain, as I said, you have got detection, you have got identification, classification. So at classification, you basically through a range of sensors, you determine the intent of the incoming drone. And once you have determined that this is a unauthorized rogue drone, you have got a series of options, hard kill options and soft kill options. Now, depending on the severity of threat, depending on the environment around your airspace, what you can do is you can actually launch a interceptor drone. The role of an interceptor drone is one, to fly very close to the incoming rogue drone, determine its intent. And once it is sufficiently convinced and the operator is sufficiently convinced that yes, this drone has a hostile intent, it can self-explode going nearby.
So like a suicide drone?
Absolutely. Second is it can also ram into the incoming drone, we call it like a Kamikaze drone. The third is it is also equipped with a net. And what it will basically do is it will go very close to the drone, and it will basically occupy or confiscate the hostile drone mid-air.
It can do that?
And actually bring it back to a pre-designated site where that drone can actually be ripped apart for forensics and further investigations. So Ukrainians are also, not just Ukrainians, I think a lot of the countries are actually now innovating and trying to build these interceptor drones, because it allows for a very controlled mitigation of a hostile drone. Second, it is also very inexpensive.
So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is there are so many different usages of drones, out of which perhaps we have thought of only like a few percent, 5% is what we are aware of. So what are the different ways drones and related technologies being used by the armed forces worldwide, whether it's the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force?
So it's a very fascinating and very evolving space, because I think the general perception about drones is that it loiters around and it strikes your enemy, but there are like hundreds of use cases of military drones as well. To begin with, we have got something called as an intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance missions. So drones which can like hover above their targets, which can quietly collect intelligence about the enemy positions, about its relative strengths and various other data points. And these data points can actually be used and validated with multiple other inputs to create your battlefield strategies. Second is also drones are also now playing a very important role in logistics. Now you've heard about the concept of like air taxis, right? In Bengaluru, they are talking about how because of the city traffic now, some innovators and some startup companies have started speaking about air taxis where drones will actually fly passengers. I think a lot of cities in India actually need these drone taxis. So some of these, I won't be surprised if the concept of air taxis is also in a way taken inspiration by the military, and they start plying these soldiers for some of these tactical missions during battlefield.
That's fascinating.
This is an innovation yet to happen, but I'm sure
you see it in the near future.
I see this happening in the next half a decade or so. Third, I think as a lot of people have spoken, that drones are also used for as a replacement for helicopters for directing artillery fire. In the good old days, right? In fact, even now, helicopters are actually employed by armed forces for these sorties, where pilots are trained in directing artillery fire, because an artillery gun cannot look at its target, right? The target is not visible. So there is a helicopter sortie which is actually sent, which hovers near the target from a safe distance, and it actually corrects the artillery fire. It actually tells the gun position that yes, the artillery shell has actually landed on the target, or actually needs to move, like say left or right. Just giving a small, very rudimentary example. Third, I think, of course, is the strike capabilities of drones, where you have got like loitering munitions. You have also got drones which are used as decoys. Which is what also happened, I think, in the first few hours of Operation Sindoor. That like say for example, India say wanted to conduct airstrikes say on one of its adversaries, so it needs to take out the air defense installations of your adversary first. Now for that, it needs to know where those air defense sites are actually located. So it will send some of these cheap drones or decoy drones, and these decoy drones are targeted by the adversaries, and by doing so they end up revealing their air defense positions. And that's when your conventional fighter aircrafts go and pound the enemy. So then there is another use case where you have got like drones which can actually supply blood products, medical equipments and medicines to soldiers very close. Then they are also, I think, conducting trials in India and elsewhere of using drones to actually drop logistics, where otherwise helicopters have to be employed.
Disaster relief also, that would
for disaster relief also, and post damage assessment, battlefield assessments. So variety of use cases. I mean,
No, that's amazing. And I think which Which brings me to an interesting question, right? As we're recording this on the 28th of January, just yesterday, the EU and India have signed this historic pact, which also incorporates, tech and defense, amongst other things. So, what is the kind of technology already existing in EU that you would love to see India benefit from, in this collaborative deal?
Well, I would definitely like to say that this is the deal of the century.
Okay.
For it's not just a free trade agreement, but it also opens up new vistas, new opportunities for innovation. One interesting part about when I was going through the joint statement was that India and European Union have now decided to develop, or rather co-develop, these innovation hubs. So these innovation hubs will kind of complement some of the indigenous research and development that India itself is undertaking for the last 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
We have also got technology innovation hubs. We have got various state governments where we have these defense and aerospace parks where startup companies, drone companies, counter drone companies have come. They've invested their resources. They are testing their products. So there could be a lot of synergies between Indian and European companies. The Germans are very keen to collaborate with India. The French are already well embedded and well engaged with the aerospace and defense sector. I think the India-EU partnership will only strengthen the momentum forward. And I think as a drone enthusiast and as a defense analyst, I am particularly keen to see greater collaboration between India and Switzerland. Because Switzerland is one country where you have got these universities which are actually spearheading innovation in drone research. And Switzerland is known for its precision engineering capabilities.
Yes.
And that actually reflects in the kind of drones that the Swiss are actually making. Of course, they are making the drones prominently for the civilian airspaces. But any kind of innovation in the aerospace domain actually works in our favor. So it's the deal of the century for India and Europe.
This is, it's so interesting to hear you say that, especially since when you mentioned Switzerland, which is famously known for its neutrality and it's not known for its military capabilities. And, you're saying that there is a lot that India can benefit out of collaboration with the various EU countries, including Switzerland.
Absolutely.
That's a refreshing new kind of, thought process. Sure. So now when we are talking about the trade deal, where do you see, I saw the Republic Day parade day before yesterday, and there was an article about the Indian Army deploying drones along the Pakistan and the China border. So where do you see our preparedness at, and where do you see us moving forward in the near future, India specifically? So
I think India is going to become an important hub for global manufacturing and innovation in drones. And of course, military will be one of the most important factors, most important sectors where this innovation will happen. When I started my research or work around drones, we had about 110 startups in the country who were innovating and making product development efforts around drone. 110.
Specifically on drones.
On drones.
Wow. Okay.
And last time I read an India Today article, it says we have got about 800 drone startups in the country now.
Okay.
So that only goes to show not just the level of enthusiasm or the interest of the market,
and the collaboration of the startup sector, the industry, and with defense technology. Right?
And I think the 800, the numbers are probably not important. What is important is that we have got our procurement policies streamlined completely. We have empowered the armed forces now to start procuring drones and a variety of defense platforms through the emergency procurement route. Then you have also got the policy ecosystem, which is actually being very supportive in the last 5 years at least. We have got some very dynamic officers and ministers who are actually supporting the overall, growth in drone sector. We have also got a great deal of market adoption. We've seen not from just the military but also from the enterprise sector. We are very keen about drones. So more market adoption means more sales or more commercial activities around drones, and that only complements further innovation and product development efforts. In terms of deployment of drones, I think it's inevitable because we have got a 15,000 kilometer long border. Yes. And a 7,500 kilometer long coastline. And we have about 8 neighbors, of which I think a lot of the neighbors actually are quite hostile. There are phases of stability, and then you have these scenarios where there is intense hostility between neighbors.
Right.
So we have our work cut out completely, and with neighbors like Pakistan, we have to employ front end technology because we need to keep our borders in check. We need to have continuous surveillance of our entire western and eastern front.
Right.
So drones are not just important from a military usage perspective, but also monitoring some of our cities, some of our critical infrastructure sites, some of our border areas where there is a lot of insurgency and terrorism activities going on. So it's very important that we procure these drones and train sufficient number of our armed forces, paramilitary forces, and the police agencies in handling these technologies and leveraging the data and the insights that we gather from it.
Yeah, I think so, because like we spoke, we didn't stick to only its usage in military. We realized in the Russia-Ukraine war, it can be used to attack energy sources, energy supplies. We've even read about the BSF deploying drones to some level. So it's interesting how it's a word which was barely heard maybe a couple of years ago is now become a part of our day-to-day life. And I also hear you with a word of caution about drones, right? While we are looking at its upsides, we are also looking at the way it can be misused.
So word of caution, in my opinion, would be that there is a need for responsible usage of drones. In 2021, the government of India notified the drone rules, which basically segregates our airspace between red zones, yellow zones, and green zones. Green zones are the airspaces where basically you don't necessarily need a permission to fly a drone. Yellow zones are basically those airspaces which are slightly in proximity to airports or strategic installations where you can fly a drone but with permission, and red zones are definitely a no-go. A lot of citizens in the country are not aware of the drone rules.
Yeah, I didn't know them either. Yeah.
So there is a need for greater sensitization, and that has to be as part of a public-private partnership where you need to involve the local police. You also need to involve the industry and organizations, NGOs, for creating community awareness about what drones are, how those drones can actually be responsibly and constructively used. See, because if you restrict the population from using drones, you will not have product development. It also kills innovation in many ways. So therefore, we need to allow a very balanced approach where the population is able to leverage the good things about the platform, but at the same time, it does not perturb the larger community. There are many critical infrastructure sites. There are, as of now, like so many drones which hover above these critical areas. Drones can also are being flown by certain irresponsible citizens. It can invade privacy of people around you. So people are not aware of it. And therefore, you need to register your drones with the Director General of Civil Aviation. And you also need to undertake certain trainings and certifications to qualify as drone pilots. And I think that is very important. So there is a greater need for public-private partnership in this space.
Okay. No, you're absolutely right. And, jumping back a little bit to something you said a little earlier in the podcast, we share borders with so many countries, out of which a lot of them are hostile to us. So, what is the kind of risks that we face apart from their military usage? What are the risks we face from rogue drones or rogue elements? As
So
one can
it is
call
not
it?
just like we face drone attacks from our adversaries' armies, but there are countless number of terrorist organizations within the country and in and around South Asia. And we unfortunately we share a long borders with
Yeah.
some of them. So these terrorist groups are employing drones not just to attack military sites, but they are in fact using drones to drop narcotics. They are using drones to like supply illegal currency. They are also using drones to like drop other kinds of contraband items and weapons and pistols. In 2025 alone, there was a news report which said that there were about 791 drone incursions on the western border of India.
Really?
We have got like 13 major ports in the country. We have got several, I think about 25 critical infrastructure sites, installations in the country. We have got a lot of nuclear power stations. We have got energy transmission lines. We have got huge number of high net worth individuals, okay, in the
Yes, yes.
country. So the vulnerabilities for India in this space are very high, and as the adversaries like the armies, even the non-state actors, the criminal groups are also learning from the attack methodologies that criminals and terrorists elsewhere in the world have used to intimidate citizens and intimidate governments
Yes.
and armed forces.
Yes.
So it's a very pressing challenge. Unfortunately, in 2021, we had a drone attack on the Jammu Air Base. This was in 2021, and I think it is traced to a Pakistani terrorist group. Similarly, there was a drone attack on a Kuki village by a terrorist outfit in Manipur, and a Kuki terrorist outfit had also used drone to drop an explosive on a Methi village in northeast India. So we have started seeing how drones are now going to be used by these hostile elements to harass population, to intimidate citizens, and become a great challenge. And I think the government has taken the right step. Now, I think we have started procuring counter drone systems throughout our borders. And I think in the next 5 years, we will see a continuation of this process where we will have a range of these soft kill and hard kill, anti-drone systems which will be deployed. In fact, in one of the the Red Fort addresses of the Prime Minister, we also had a anti-drone system which was which was developed by DRDO. So this trend will continue for the next foreseeable future.
See, there's so much about drones that we still don't know, and so much about technology progression. So one question that came out of your answer is that when we spoke about drone usage in the countries that are deploying them in the various ways they're deploying them, it seems to be more of a deep pockets kind of game. So where is India on that? In terms of progress, are we a little late in getting into this field?
Well, I think yes, it's fair to say that yes, we woke up a little late in the game, but the way in which, as I said, right, we have got about 800 startups as per a news
Right,
report.
right.
Now that only goes to show the level of enthusiasm, not just from the private sector, but also from the government. And we had a production linked incentive scheme for drones and drone components, basically which incentivize drone startups to enter this space. We have got like different Startup India initiative. You have got the National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems, under which like you have got these different technology innovation hubs in various technology institutions of the country. We have got these incubators where these drone startups are mushrooming. So that is one. Second, I think there are also large conglomerates, large industrial conglomerates who are also now taking a very keen interest in the drone and overall the aerospace segment. Now they have started either investing in these small drone startups, but at the same time they are also like tying up with some of the foreign original equipment manufacturers.
Okay.
Third is there is a great deal of technology and production partnership where some of the research and development labs like the DRDO, the National Aerospace Laboratories, some of and the likes of them, they have started now entering into production partnership agreements where the labs innovate, they do all the research and development around the technology, and then they transfer that technology to their production partners which in the private sector. So I think India seemed that we have been
Got into it a little late.
Got into it a little late, but then I think we are like steadying ourselves, and I think the way in which we are innovating now, we have started exporting some of our drones abroad as well. We are now exporting some of our counter drone systems abroad. We are also tying up with foreign countries in like with United Kingdoms. We have got a major partnership on unmanned aerial systems. Germany too has evinced interest now when the German Chancellor visited Ahmedabad last month. So they've in the defense agreement they've actually said that Germany is interested to partner with India in drone technology.
Nice.
With Americans, we are already buying drone equipment, male drones, that is medium altitude, long endurance drones. With the Israelis, we already have a thriving partnership. So this trend will continue, and I think with the EU partnership, you will see the whole innovation roadmap just improving with each passing day.
Okay, that's a really nice, bullish, and realistic perspective both to have. And I had Commodore Shrikant Kesnur on my podcast earlier, and he described it as that our technological progress, including drones, is going to be industry, academia, startups, and our defense services coming together in the interest of national security.
Absolutely. So another fascinating aspect of the manner in which our innovation is moving forward is that earlier innovation used to happen in silos. Like the fact that startups would innovate on their own, what they deemed appropriate was important for the end users.
Correct.
Whereas when the product was actually taken to the end user, it did not resonate or align with their operational requirements. But now the Indian Armed Forces are directly talking to the promising startups, and they are actually officially communicating their problem statements to these startups and to the general innovation community. That gives the startups a good reference point, a kind of a perspective as to what is the broad or a very specific requirement of the end users. That helps them in deploying their resources to innovate and create those platforms which are more aligned to operational requirements.
Right, and in a better and a more effective way, right? They can utilize that.
Yes.
So, no, it was really nice chatting with you, Sanket, and thank you for taking out the time and giving us a kind of deep dive into the world of drone technology.
Thank you.
And we hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and make sure you check out my other podcast, which was on a similar topic, which was AI and technology that the Indian Navy is deploying. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and see you all next week. Bye.